Welcome back to the deep dive. Our whole mission here is pretty simple. We take these incredible historical sources, these deep legal texts, and we unpack them, we pull out the stuff that really matters and hand it over to you.
And today, wow, we are opening up a file that's, what, over 1,400 years old?
Something like that, yeah.
It's a court case. And on the surface, it seems really simple, really specific. But the outcome, I mean, it fundamentally changed how we think about power and government.
It really did.
Oh.
So we're looking at one of the most celebrated moments in, I guess, all of legal history.
Yeah, that's not an exaggeration. Our sources for this deep dive come from a collection of Islamic legal precedents, and they're focused on what they call the judgments of the rightly guided caliphs.
And the theme for this specific story is just,
Yeah.
it's so powerful. It's titled, When the Head of State Stood Before a Judge as an Ordinary Man.
And that's it right there. That's the whole story. It's where this high-minded theory about justice meets, the gritty reality of a courtroom dispute.
That's the core conflict, isn't it? You have the most powerful man in the entire empire,
Mm-hmm.
the Caliph, the commander of the faithful. He loses something, a piece of his own property.
Mm.
He finds the guy who has it. And then, and this is the key part, instead of just saying, that's mine, give it back, using his executive power,
Mm-hmm.
he does the opposite.
The complete
He
opposite.
chooses to strip himself of all that power
Yeah.
and walks into a formal public court
Yeah.
as a regular person. And that single act, it just shifts the entire balance of power.
Absolutely. And we need to set the scene. The historical context is so crucial here. The ruler we're talking about is Caliph Ali ibn Abi Talib, the fourth of the rightly guided caliphs, a figure known for his deep, deep commitment to the law.
And he's facing off against two other key figures.
Right. First, there's the judge, Shurayh al-Kindi, and we need to talk more about him, but his name was basically synonymous with legal integrity. And then there's the other party in the dispute, the litigant, a Christian citizen of the Caliphate, just a regular guy who suddenly finds himself in a legal battle with the emperor.
I can't even imagine. And this all goes down in the city of Kufa.
Yeah, which at the time wasn't just some city, it was the administrative capital.
Yeah.
The nerve center of the Caliphate. So you have the top judge in the capital city hearing a case involving the Caliph himself. The stakes are enormous.
So our mission today, for you listening, is to really unpack how this one single event, this one trial, became the ultimate model for judicial independence.
Right. It set a standard for the supremacy of law over the ruler's personal power. And we want to see what principles were laid down here that, you can still see resonating in modern constitutions today. This story is basically the foundational text for accountability in government.
Okay, so let's get into the setup. It all starts with something really mundane, right? A lost item.
A lost item, yes. But the sources are very clear. This wasn't like losing your keys. The symbolism here is massive.
What was it exactly?
It was Caliph Ali's armor, specifically his shield. And the sources go out of their way to specify that this was the very same shield he had used in the Battle of Siffin.
Wow, okay. So that's significant.
It's hugely significant for a couple of reasons. First, military equipment back then, especially for a commander, was valuable. It was custom. But second, and more importantly, this particular piece of armor was tied directly to his legitimacy as a leader, as a commander in a major pivotal battle.
So it's not just a piece of metal, it's part of his history. It's a piece of state heritage, really.
Exactly. This was not a small loss.
So the shield goes missing, and then what happens?
The story moves pretty quickly. Caliph Ali is in the marketplace in Kufa, and he sees it. He sees a Christian man, carrying his shield. He recognizes it instantly. No doubt in his mind.
And his reaction.
It's direct. The sources record his claim as being really firm, just immediate recognition. He says, "This is my armor. I did not sell it, nor did I gift it to anyone."
So a straight-up claim of ownership? No ambiguity.
Not at all.
But I have to wonder, let's put ourselves in that moment. It's the 7th century. You're the Caliph. You see your war shield. What is the expected reaction from a ruler in that era? I mean, what would a Byzantine emperor have done? Or a Persian king?
That is the perfect question, because the expected action globally, without a doubt, would have been immediate seizure.
Right, just take it.
Just take it. Rulers at that time were. Their word was law. They held all the power, executive, military, judicial. It was all fused into their person. A typical ruler would have just had the man arrested, the shield confiscated. Maybe worse if the man argued back.
The idea that a ruler would need to, prove his own claim against a common citizen?
It was completely foreign. especially against a non-Muslim citizen. The concept of an external check on the ruler's personal claim to property just didn't exist in that framework of absolute power.
But the man with the shield, he doesn't just fold.
He doesn't. He pushes back. He says, no, it is mine and it is in my possession. And that statement right there, it creates an instant legal dispute.
Possession versus ownership.
Exactly. The man has possession, Ali is claiming title. And that's the classic legal conflict.
And this is the moment. The decision that changes everything.
This is it. This is what turns a simple story into a foundational legal precedent. Caliph Ali, faced with this denial, makes a choice. Instead of using his immense power, he takes the man to court. A formal, public, civilian court.
And the sources, they really emphasize this, don't they? They say he did what no ruler in the world had done before.
They do. And we really have to sit with that for a second. By choosing the court, Ali is performing an act of self-limitation. He's publicly stating, my personal belief, my status as Caliph, it's all secondary to the established legal process.
He's voluntarily submitting himself to a system that he could, in theory, just override.
And that voluntary submission is everything. The implications were immediate. First, it gives the court system this incredible legitimacy. It says the court is supreme, even over the ruler's will.
It also sends a message to everyone else.
Right. A huge message. It tells every single person living in the caliphate, no matter who they are, what their religion is, what their social standing is, that their rights are protected by a law that even the caliph has to obey.
So this wasn't just Ali trying to get his shield back. He was performing an act of governance.
A profound act of governance. He was making the rule of law a real, tangible thing that people could see with their own eyes, not just some abstract idea. He elevated the court from just another government department into something independent.
He basically trades the title, Commander of the Faithful, for private citizen the moment he steps through that courthouse door.
Precisely. And that transition is what empowers the judge, Shurayh, to do what he does next. The moment Ali chose the court, he willingly handed the power of the final decision from himself to that institution.
Which brings us right to the trial itself, and this judge, Shurayh al-Kindi. Tell us about him. He must have had an incredible reputation to be able to handle a case like this.
He did. He was one of the most respected jurists of his time, famous not just for his knowledge of the law, but for his absolute courage in applying it. He'd been appointed years earlier by Caliph Umar and had been kept on because his integrity was just seen as unimpeachable.
So his authority didn't really come from Ali, it came from the law itself.
Exactly. He wasn't beholden to the caliph for his legitimacy, he was beholden to the legal texts. His presence on the bench alone signaled to everyone that this was going to be a serious, by-the-book proceeding.
Okay, so paint the picture for us. Caliph Ali and the Christian man walk into the open court in Kufa. What's the atmosphere like?
I mean, you can just imagine the tension, the silence. The leader of the entire empire is walking in as a litigant, and the judge's first action is just a masterclass in how to handle this.
What does he do?
So when the caliph enters, Judge Shurayh stands up. He rises out of respect for the office, for the man. It's a gesture of personal deference.
Acknowledging his status.
Acknowledging his status, but that's where the personal deference ends.
And then comes the move that sets the precedent.
Immediately. After showing that personal respect, he asserts the supremacy of the court. He politely, but with absolute firmness, says to Ali, "O Commander of the Faithful, please sit with the defendant. This is a court of law."
Wow. Just that. Wow. Please sit with the defendant. That one sentence. Logistically, visually, legally, it just establishes total equality, doesn't it?
Total equality. It's the physical performance of judicial independence. It's saying, in here, in this room, it doesn't matter if you command armies or sweep streets. You are a party to a dispute, and you will sit equally next to the person you are accusing.
It's just astonishing. It strips the Caliph of any and all advantage of his rank right there in public. It visually communicates that for this moment in time, the court is superior to the executive.
It is. The symbolism is impossible to miss.
And Ali's reaction is just as important as the judge's courage.
Absolutely. Because if Ali had hesitated, if he'd argued or looked for a better seat, the entire principle would have been undermined.
But he doesn't. He just sits down.
He complies immediately. And by doing so, he confirms the rule, he validates the judge's authority, he demonstrates that his own legitimacy as a ruler comes from his submission to the law, not from his ability to be above it.
It's such a powerful contrast. You know, a ruler's strength is usually seen as the ability to command. Here, his strength is shown in his willingness to obey.
That's a perfect way to put it.
Let me ask a practical question here, though. What stopped Ali, after this was all over, from just firing Judge Shurayh. I mean, the judge serves at the Caliph's pleasure, technically.
That's a fantastic question because it gets to the heart of power versus legitimacy. Yes, Shurayh was an appointee, but the system's strength came from the moral and religious authority of the law itself.
Okay.
If Ali had fired the judge for ruling against him, it would have been a disaster for his own rule. It would have screamed tyranny and hypocrisy to every corner of the caliphate. The very basis of his governance, which was built on Islamic principles of justice, would have crumbled.
So he understood that preserving the integrity of the system was more valuable than winning a personal dispute.
Far more valuable. The cost of firing Shurayh would have been his own moral authority. And that was a price he was clearly not willing to pay. The cost of the shield was nothing in comparison.
So the judge's job security wasn't in his contract. It was in the Caliph's own need for credibility.
That's fascinating. Okay, so procedurally, they're on equal footing. Now let's get to the actual legal arguments, the evidence.
Right. So Ali presents his case. It's very simple. The armor is mine, and I claim it was lost from my belongings. That's a claim of title.
Okay. And in any court, if you make a claim, you have to back it up.
Exactly. The burden of proof is on the claimant, especially when the other person already has possession of the item. So Judge Shurayh does what the law requires. He asks very simply, do you have any witnesses, O Caliph?
And Ali does have witnesses.
He does. He names two people, his son, Hasan, and his servant, Kambar.
Okay, so two people who would definitely know his belongings. They were part of his household. Yes. And this is the absolute heart of the trial. This is the moment that elevates this case from an interesting historical anecdote into a timeless legal precedent.
Because of who the witness is?
Because of who his son, Hasan, was. Hasan wasn't just anybody's son. He was a man of the highest moral standing in the community, known for his piety, his honesty. If you were going to believe anyone's word, you would believe his.
Okay, judge.
The judge had to apply the law as it was written. He had to focus not on the character of the witness, but on the structural integrity of the legal process itself.
And so he makes this incredible decision.
He does. With all due respect, he declines to accept the testimony of Ali's son.
He rejects the witness.
He rejects the witness.
Yeah.
And he gives the explicit legal reason, a reason that would echo through jurisprudence for centuries, he says. The testimony of a son for his father is not admissible in this case.
Okay, we need to unpack that. Let's go deep here. Why? Why would the law assume bias even when the person testifying is known to be unimpeachable?
This gets to a core legal principle about impartiality and avoiding conflicts of interest, especially in disputes about property or money. The law has to operate on general principles that ensure the system is fair for everyone all the time.
So it's not a comment on Hasan's character.
Not at all. It's a protection for the system. The law has to presume that there is a natural, inherent emotional bond and obligation when a close family member, like a son, testifies for a parent in a property dispute. It presumes the potential for bias is structurally present in that relationship.
So even if there's no actual bias in this specific case, the rule is there to prevent the possibility of it in all cases.
Precisely. Think about it this way. If Judge Shurayh makes an exception for Hasan because of his famous piety, he breaks the rule.
And then everyone will want an exception.
Exactly. The next person who comes to court will say, my son is also a very honest man. You have to believe him. And suddenly the judge is no longer ruling based on objective legal principles, but on his subjective evaluation of every witness's moral character. It becomes unworkable.
So by basing the ruling on the relationship father and son, the judge keeps the rule objective and universal. It applies to everyone equally. The integrity of the system comes first.
The integrity of the system has to come before the reputation of any single individual, no matter how great that reputation is. It's a staggering commitment to structural justice over personal character.
So what about the other witness, the servant Kambar?
The same principle applies. While the sources focus on the son's testimony because it's such a powerful example, the testimony of a servant or a dependent falls into a similar category. The law is wary of testimony from anyone who is in a subordinate relationship, be it familial, economic, or professional, to the person they're testifying for.
Because there's a presumed conflict of interest? They might hope for a reward or fear consequences.
Exactly. The potential for coercion or undue influence is just too high for the testimony to be considered completely impartial.
So the message is crystal clear. Even if you are the Caliph, you can't just use your own family and household staff to prove your case. You need independent, third-party evidence, just like any other citizen.
And this whole section of the trial is a masterclass in what jurists call fiqh al-qada, basically the rules of court procedure, the laws of evidence. Judge Shurayh's actions here cemented the practical application of these rules. The burden of proof is on the claimant, period. And if the Caliph can't meet that standard, he can't win.
And we shouldn't gloss over the fact that the defendant here is a Christian citizen. In the 7th century, that's a massive detail.
It's fundamental. The fact that the court applied these incredibly strict evidentiary standards equally, even when it meant ruling against the Muslim caliph in favor of a non-Muslim citizen. It was a powerful statement.
What did that signal?
It signaled that the protections of the law extended to everyone under the state's jurisdiction, regardless of their faith. It made the justice system an institution of the state, not just an institution for one particular religious group. It was about universal citizenship under the law.
So by rejecting the caliph's witnesses, the judge proves that the principles of justice are immune to power, status, and religion, which leaves only one possible outcome for the trial.
With no other admissible evidence presented, no documents, no impartial third-party witnesses, Judge Shurayh was legally bound. He had no other choice.
He ruled in favor of the Christian man.
He did. The commander of the faithful, the leader of the empire, lost his case in his own capital city against one of his own citizens.
And that verdict, that loss, is what solidifies the entire precedent, isn't it? A victory for Ali would have just been a ruler getting his property back. A loss was a victory for the law itself.
It was the ultimate demonstration that the system worked. The court wasn't there to rubber stamp the caliph's claim. It was there to weigh evidence according to impartial rules. Since Ali couldn't meet the standard, he lost. And that was proof that the system was real.
The legal principles are one thing, but the sources really focus on the human reaction to this, especially the reaction of the man who won.
Yes, his responses may be the most powerful part of the story. He wasn't just, happy that he won and got to keep the shield. He was completely overwhelmed by the fairness of what he had just witnessed.
What did he say?
The source records him exclaiming something like, "A ruler of Muslims brought me to his own court, and the judge ruled against him. By Allah, this is the truth." He was stunned.
You can feel the astonishment in that quote. It's that moment where abstract legal ideas become a real, tangible experience for someone. The justice was so obvious, so visible.
And it was justice that favored the weaker party, the non-Muslim citizen over the caliph. That visibility is everything, and it had an immediate, profound effect on him.
What did he do?
Overcome by what he'd seen, he confessed. He stood up right then and there and said that the shield did, in fact, belong to Caliph Ali. He explained that he'd found it on the ground after it was dropped.
So he admits it all, and then he does something even more remarkable.
He does. He gives the shield back, of course. But then, right there, he embraces Islam. Not because anyone forced him to, but because he was so moved by the justice he had just been shown.
And that's the moral takeaway that the sources drive home, isn't it?
It is. The idea is that when a ruler is willing to accept a verdict against himself, justice becomes so powerful and so supreme that it becomes a manifestation of faith itself. It showed that the greatest tool the state had for winning hearts and minds wasn't power, but a truly independent justice system.
Ali might have lost the court case, but by losing, his government gained this immeasurable moral authority. He proved he was a servant of the law, not its master.
Exactly.
Okay, so this trial is clearly more than just a single event. It becomes a blueprint. Let's try to systematically list the core legal principles, the fiqh al-qada, that were established or cemented by this case.
I think we can boil it down to 3 foundational pillars, and they're all still incredibly relevant in any discussion about law and governance today.
Okay, what's the first one? For the 7th century, this must have been just earth-shattering. The sovereignty of law.
That's the big one. It established in the most practical way possible that no one is above the law, not even the head of state. Executive power must bow to the judicial process.
So if the ruler can't meet the same legal standards as a regular citizen, he loses. Simple as that.
Simple as that. It's a fundamental limit on executive power. It's really one of the earliest and clearest historical examples of checks and balances at the highest level of an empire. You contrast that with, say, the Roman idea that the emperor was the living law.
Right, he was the law.
Ali demonstrated that he was subject to the law, a huge difference.
Okay, pillar number 2, which we talked a lot about, the impartiality of evidence.
This is all about maintaining trust in the system. The specific rule that testimony from a close family member is inadmissible in a property dispute is designed to create a firewall against bias.
It keeps the process objective.
Completely. It ensures that justice isn't influenced by personal relationships or status. The focus is always on what can be proven by neutral parties, not on who is making the claim or who is backing them up.
And the third principle you mentioned is visible justice.
Yes. Justice can't just be a concept, it has to be seen and felt to be real. The fact that the judge ruled against the most powerful person in the land made the fairness of the system undeniable. It was a public performance of justice.
And that visibility is what had such a profound impact on the Christian man.
It's what proves the system is legitimate. A system is truly just dude when it demonstrates it can protect the rights of the weakest party against the claims of the strongest.
So if we were to sum up the entire legal philosophy of this case, the ratio decidendi,
Yeah.
the core reason for the ruling that gives it its power, what would that be?
I think the core legal reasoning is this. The legitimacy of authority rests not in power, but in submission to justice. That's the binding principle. A ruler's true strength, their right to rule, comes from upholding the justice system, not from being able to manipulate it. Legitimacy through accountability.
And that's why the 7th century case still echoes today, isn't it? It's a constant reference point.
It is. For centuries, Islamic jurists have used this case as the gold standard for judicial autonomy. It set the bar. If Judge Shurayh could rule against the Caliph, then any future judge should have the courage to rule against a powerful governor or official.
And you can see its spirit in modern government structures all over the world.
Oh, absolutely. When you look at modern constitutions that guarantee the rule of law or judicial autonomy or the equal treatment of citizens,
Right.
these are all conceptual descendants of the standard that was set in that courtroom in Kufa.
So every time we see a modern leader being subjected to a subpoena or having to face a lawsuit like a regular person,
They are embodying, whether they know it or not, the very same principle that Caliph Ali enacted when he sat down next to his defendant. It's the idea that if a state is truly just, its legal system has to be capable of ruling against the state itself.
if the leader can't lose in court, then the court just serves the leader, not the law.
And this story is the ultimate proof that governance by principle isn't just an ideal, it's possible. It happened. It's the perfect example of making a small, temporary sacrifice, losing a shield for the enormous permanent gain of systemic integrity.
What a deep dive. I feel like we've really covered it. From the context of 7th century power to the revolutionary act of submission, the rigor of the evidence law, and that final, incredible human response to seeing justice done.
For me, if you, the listener, take anything away from this, it should be those two moments, the friction and the submission. First, that simple instruction from Judge Shurayh, please sit with the defendant. That one sentence created the independent judiciary in that moment.
And the second one has to be the rejection of the son's testimony. That single legal decision proved that the principles of the law were more important than political power, more important than personal reputation. The system was more important than the individual.
And what it teaches us today, I think, is that real authority, real leadership is defined by accountability. The greatest source of legitimacy for anyone in a position of power, whether you're a CEO, a parent, a president, is your willingness to be bound by the same rules as everyone else.
And having the courage to accept a loss when the rules demand it, for the good of the whole system.
Exactly.
It's the ultimate story of good governance. The ruler loses a small personal battle over a piece of property, but in doing so, he wins the trust and moral authority of his civilization, and he sets a standard for justice that we are still talking about today.
Which brings us to a final thought for you to take away from this. This story is so powerful because justice truly won when the most powerful person in the room lost the case. We all live and work inside systems, families, companies, communities. So think about this. In your own life, in your own organization, where does your own pursuit of personal convenience or power get in the way of submitting to fair, impartial rules? And what would it really take for you to willingly accept a decision that goes against your own interests, knowing that by taking that personal loss, you make the whole system stronger and fairer for everyone else?
A powerful question to reflect on. The nature of real accountability. Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into justice above the ruler. We'll see you next time.